I ask everyone to please take their seats? Thank you. Can I ask the clerk to call the roll?
John Donovan, Michael Hurley, Jay Lipp, Gaylord Meyer, Eric Sunman, Peter Ambrose, Catherine Burstein, Nathaniel Schindler, Jeffrey Steele, Keith Varian, Ed Bateson, Laura Devlin, Hank Ferenc, David McKenzie, Mary McCullough,
Here.
Heather Dean, Joseph DiMartino, Bill Gerber, Joe Palmer, Cindy Waldron, Joshua Garskoff, Laureen O'Brien, Andrew Semmel, Bruce May, Carol Way, Julie Gottlieb, Alan Marks, Sheila Marmion, Jay Wolk, Elizabeth Zezima, Jennifer Hochberg, Kevin Hopkins, Eric Newman, Philip Piers, Hal Schwartz, Catherine Braun, Alex Durrell, Jason Lee, Tom McCarthy, Jeff Malorano, Pam Iacono, Ellen Jacob, Lori McArdle, Carol Pontrelli, Chris Timniak, Brian Caffarelli, Brian Farnan, Raymond Newberger, Bill Perugini, Bruce Ryan.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Could I all ask that you stand and face the flag for our Pledge of Allegiance? And then I ask that you continue to stand for a moment of silence. And as we look forward to next Monday's celebration of Memorial Day, to remember all those who have served our country and died for our freedom. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 28th, 2014. Can I entertain a motion to discuss? Heather Dean, thank you. Seconded by Representative Smay. Drop my water. Are there any changes or edits to the minutes as presented? Seeing none, can I have a vote? All in favor to accept the minutes as written? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, the next item is to hear and consider upon the act of the following appointment to the Town Facilities Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Rodney J. Van Duzen, Democrat from 157 Longdean Road, the term of July 2012 to 2015. Mr. Van Duzen is here. He was available at our committee meetings. Are there any questions from any members of the body? I do have a question that came out of committee that was a result of a conversation about the Town Facilities Committee, and Commission, and I've asked the First Selectman to address those questions that were presented at our meetings, if you would be so kind.
Thank you. There were several questions, but let me take one, two, or three, and we'll start the discussion from there. One question I think was, what's the question came out about the future of the TFC and what's the current status of it. One, overall, because of our push to decrease annual debt service payments and keep our bonding under control, there have been fewer projects going through. Consequently, we've seen less activity on the TFC than perhaps we saw 5 to 8 years ago. But they still, I think, perform a valuable role. The question of what they should be doing or what they might be doing and how to add value, is a discussion that I've been continuing over the last 6 months or so with the chair and with a couple members of the TFC. And I've asked them to go back and take a look at their charge. In this case, it's really the ordinance that set them up. There's a charge and an ordinance, but I believe the charge came up before the ordinance was set, so the ordinance should be taking priority there. Take a look at the ordinance in terms of what's taking place, but also take a look at the Special Projects Standing Building Committee. And I do have some questions as to whether we need both, and whether maybe this is the point to actually combine those. For those of you that haven't been around as long, the Special Projects Standing Building Committee was set up to do smaller type projects, typically defined as $3 million or less. So if you think back, they've done some things like some of the pod projects at either Sherman or Osborne Hill, I forget which, but I think they did one of those. They were doing the renovations at Sherman School. Most recently, we've assigned them the Mill Hill Roof Project. Mill Hill Roof Project is $400,000. It was approved by this body back when non-recurring came through. It would typically be a maintenance project. You wouldn't think twice about it. You'd get it done. However, in order to get state reimbursement on a school project, we need to have it assigned to a building committee. So that's a classic case of turning to the Special Project Standing Building Committee and say, you're already set up, you're a building committee, please jump into action and help us get this thing done. The TFC typically hasn't been doing projects. However, if you, again, for those who've been around for a while, if you remember the start of the Ward Roof Project, that actually came out of a review that the TFC did, they kind of started it so we wouldn't lose any time, and then handed it off to the Ward Roof Building Committee when that got up and running. All right. When you look at, there are two other things I've asked the TFC to do currently. One is the Golf Commission has asked to form a building committee to look at a new golf clubhouse. And I've asked the TFC to meet with them, meet with Parks and Rec, and kind of look at the specs and what they're looking at to provide a second opinion to the Board of Selectmen when that comes before us. And also, because we have a capital plan now, more fully fleshed out than it's been historically, but in the last 2 years, we've really put together all the projects, both capital and non-recurring, as part of our capital plan, and as you see it in the waterfall chart and the support documents for that. I've gone back and asked the TFC to meet with Joe Michelangelo and the other department heads that have projects proposed in there to suggest if there's any way the TFC should be involved in some of those as we take a look at those coming down the road. But on an ongoing basis, the TFC has been a resource that we've looked at when we're looking to staff building committees. Now, they're volunteers. We still have to ask them to be on a committee. But TFC members are on Riverfield, on Ward Roof, on Penfield, on Ludlow Building Committee, on Osborne Hill, and as I mentioned, the Mill Hill Roof Building Committee. They've, in the past, been on Fairfield Woods Middle School, Stratfield, Sherman School, as I mentioned, those special projects. And recently, they also did, when we looked at the Fairfield Woods Branch Library and decided we weren't going to go forward with a full-scale building committee for that, I asked them to take a look at that, help set priorities for the maintenance projects we needed to do there, and work with DPW on doing that. So they've been an active part. I think that now is an appropriate time to go to the membership and say, hey, give us your recommendations on what this should be going forward. We had a committee set up with members to review our building process overall in terms of how we do school projects, town projects, and non-recurring projects. A couple years ago, that had members of the RTM, that had members of the Board of Finance, that had members of the Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, Central Office, and the TFC to take a look at how we approach that. So we kind of came out of that with some guidelines. It answered the question, do we need to have a budget approved for school building projects before we go out to bid? The answer is yes, because that's how the state process is defined and needs it to be. On the town side, we don't have to follow that, so we can go out to bid before we come back to this body or the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance and say, here's the money we'd like approved for that. So this has been kind of an ongoing process of reviewing what's taken place on that. Does that help, and are there any questions based on that? Does that answer the question?
Thank you. I think it did. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that information. Now, I'll entertain a motion. Representative Garskoff, followed by Representative Marks. Any comments from the members of the body on the appointment of Mr. Van Duzel to the Town Facilities Commission? Seeing none, any comments from the public? It's such an intimate group tonight. Seeing none, back to the body. All those in favor of accepting the appointment of Mr. Van Duzel to the Town Facilities Commission, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, and thank you. Next item is, item number 4, is to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that in accordance with a request from the Director of Community and Economic Development, applications received under the Neighborhood Assistance Act, Program B and hereby are approved, and further resolved that the Director of Community and Economic Development be and hereby is authorized to serve as municipal liaison as an overseer of implementation of the program. I'll entertain a motion to discuss. Representative Marks, second. Representative Way. Thank you. Any discussion on item number 4? No discussion from the body. Any discussion from the public? Comments? Seeing none, back to the body. All those in favor of accepting item number 4 as written, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. We going for a record? Okay. Item number 5. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. And I'm actually going to read in the housekeeping revised number into the record. Resolved that the program year 40, October 1, 2014 through September 30, 2015 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, is hereby approved in the amount of $456,698, and further resolved that Michael C. Tetro, first selectman of the town of Fairfield, be and hereby is authorized to execute any and all necessary documents that facilitate the town's participation in said CDBG program. Any questions from the body? Representative Timiak. Here.
Good evening. I have 2 quick questions. One, I asked some questions of Mr. Barnhart before the meeting started in regard to some of the questions I was asking during caucus. I'm happy with those answers, but I do want to ask, how do you think, during a subcommittee meeting, let me go back, we came to the conclusion that about $75,000 of the home improvement money wasn't being spent per year out of the $125,000 being allocated. How do you think we could help better market that so that more residents are aware of this money which is on the table, which we're not utilizing? And by me asking this question, I think it's a good first step towards marketing that towards the audience at home and the people who might be watching that.
Thank you for asking that question. I think it's incumbent upon all of us as public officials to try to make sure that everyone is aware of the programs and services we provide. So I appreciate the fact that you raised that question. We do have a program that assists owner-occupied properties. If you need to have work done around your house, you meet certain income eligibility restrictions, you're the owner of that property, we can assist you. And if you're interested in learning more about that program, please contact my office at 256-3120. I'm giving that for the purpose of everyone listening at home. You can also find some information out on the town's website, fairfieldcd.org. But I would say if any of you want to refer folks that may be interested in the program, we'd appreciate that. We do obviously provide announcements through the local media. We posted information on our website. We meet with local real estate agents and others that may be involved, that may also talk to individuals who have interest in the program. We meet with the senior center and give presentations there. If you know of a group that would benefit from me appearing before that group and providing some specific information, I'd be happy to do that. And if you'd like further information in terms of brochures that you want to distribute to your constituents or folks that you know, I'd be happy to provide that as well. So I think all of this is very helpful, and I appreciate the question.
No problem. And again, I mean, it appears for the residents at home, this is a program which a lot of people could take advantage of. We are leaving about half the money, roughly, on the table left unused per year. So if you're home and you're thinking about doing some home repairs or home remodeling, this is a great opportunity to contact the Office of Mark Barnhart to see if you can take advantage of these programs.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, we don't actually lose the money. It does roll over from one fiscal year to the next, but we'd like to make use of those funds in a timely fashion, so if people do have interest in that program, please contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. I encourage everybody to support this.
Representative Braun.
Through you, Ms. Moderator, to Mark, Mr. Barnhart. I have a two-part question. I just want to understand the numbers a little better. There's a use number, and then there's the source of money number. The use number is 461,968, which includes $68,000 for various nonprofit organizations that provide help to people, $85,000 for street improvements, more or less, $91,000 for the administrator who does a lot of the grant writing, and the affordable housing activities is $217,000. So during committee, I had asked a question about if, well, this 461,968 is that's what those numbers add up to. Is that the use that you're expecting for program year 40, which ends on September 30th, 2014?
No, this is for the federal fiscal year that begins October 1st of 2014 and runs through September 30th of 2015. So this is an allocation plan. It's a budget. It's how we propose to utilize federal community development block grant funds for the year. Basically, there are 4 eligible categories, if you will. Public service activities, which we can allocate not more than 15% of the grant toward. Those primarily fund nonprofit organizations and municipal agencies that are engaged in that work. We can also fund community development needs, which street and sidewalk improvements fall under, and then housing development. We can't actually build new construction new construction of housing with the funds, but we can fund the program that Representative Timiak just referred to, which is our owner-occupied rehab program, our down payment and closing cost assistance program. All those fall under that housing category, and then program administration. So these are the proposed uses, how we would propose to spend or utilize federal dollars to meet these community and housing development needs in town. And then the sources themselves are the federal grant, which accounts for $456,698, and program income, which is repayment of program loans of $5,270, which total the $461,968 that is before you tonight.
I want to follow up on those numbers. If there's money left over on September 30th that's not used, as Mr. Timiak was pointing out, does that get added on to the budget then?
It's allocated for these specific uses, and that can roll over into the following program year. We're required to spend the old money first. Actually, we're required to spend program income first before utilizing or drawing down federal dollars, and we have to spend the oldest federal dollars first before spending, in effect, new dollars.
So we could actually see an expansion of the total budget for the next program year, for this program year, if money isn't used in the prior?
It continues, it is set aside for those specific uses that you've approved unless it's been modified.
And my other question is, also during committee, and I just saw that you sent us the application materials, it cannot be used on new construction of affordable housing. However, as an incentive to for people who have multifamily houses, can it be used to incentivize them in some manner to do the deed restriction that's required to add to our affordable housing stock and thus raise our compliance level with the quota that we need to reach without raising the total number of houses, which then makes it very difficult to reach that percentage quota? That was a complicated question.
But I think I get the gist of it. Yes, we can increase our affordable housing stock, and we do that through our, we have two components to our neighborhood revitalization program. One is an owner-occupied program that I spoke of earlier, and we also have a non-owner occupied property which provides an incentive, a monetary inducement for landlords to participate in that. Will finance 100% of the cost of eligible improvements to the home, to the rental unit, in exchange for a deed restriction that would allow us to count that unit or units towards our affordable housing inventory. So that is how we utilize that program.
So that might be another way of using unused funds, for example. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ambrose, excuse me.
Peter Ambrose, District 2. Through you, Madam Moderator, to Mark. Mark, how much, what extent of funds have been rolled over from year to year that weren't used during the prior years? Is there an accumulation of funds that we have that we still have not used?
Well, every year we have some monies left over that are not expended that roll into the following program year. And there's several reasons for that. And it varies, the amount varies from year to year. One of the issues is that while the federal fiscal year begins October 1st, we frequently don't have a release or authorization to use those funds until sometime later. So we typically lose anywhere from 1 to 3 to 4 months at the beginning of the fiscal year, federal fiscal year, before we can actually legally utilize or spend those dollars that have been allocated. The second and more important reason is we do fund capital projects, some of which may not be as construction ready as we would like at the beginning of the year. Despite assurances otherwise, it goes through a fairly rigorous procurement process, and sometimes projects get delayed, but they do eventually get completed. And so it's necessary for us to roll those into the program year. And then, as Representative Timiak spoke of earlier, we have programs that we allocate funds for where utilization perhaps is not what we anticipate. And so those funds remain available for use and eventually do get spent, but it may get rolled into the following program year before we actually expend those dollars. And so long as we don't keep on account an amount more than 1.5 times our grant amount, we're okay. We're considered in compliance with HUD in terms of timeliness of expenses. So that is our threshold, that we can't maintain a balance in accounts larger than that threshold amount.
And as a follow-up question, 1/2 of that amount, do you mean 1/2 of the $461,000?
It's actually 1 1/2 times. So it's fairly common. We're not atypical in terms of an entitlement community where, as you can guess from looking at the paperwork associated with this, the federal requirements are rather rigorous. And so it does take time, despite everyone's best efforts to be timely in the expense of these dollars. Sometimes projects tend to drag on a bit. If they go on too long, we do have the option of canceling those projects and reallocating them to other projects. I know several of you have mentioned to me particularly other development needs or housing or other priorities in town or projects potentially that might be eligible for funding. You know, we try to keep a running list of those projects available in the event that we do have leftover funds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ambrose. Are there any other questions? Representative Miloragno.
Jeff Miloragno, District 8. I just wanted to make a point, I guess, not a question necessarily, but in the guidelines of the grant, it's allowed for 20% of the funds to be used for administration. And in future budgets, I would just like to see that number be a little less, so more of the money can actually be spent on the programs as opposed to administering them. Thank you.
Representative Jacobs. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to respond?
Mark, could you address that and provide some background as to how we use that capability to minimize the tax dollars spent on the town?
Well, the portion of the budget allocated for program administration covers the salary and benefits, primarily the salary and benefits associated with one staff position. There are some other expenses that we can charge to the grant as opposed to charging to our general fund budget. We do our best to manage within that allocation and sometimes actually spend less than the 20% that we have budget authority to spend up to. But what we do is we try to shift eligible costs that otherwise might be in the town's budget against the grant where it should be spent to the extent possible.
I guess the short form is that you use this money to minimize the budget of the town and save
Yes.
taxpayers' money.
I'm sorry, that was, yeah, long-winded answer. That's correct. Yes.
Other questions? Representative Jacob?
Ellen Jacob, District 9, through you, Madam Moderator, to Mr. Barnhart. This is really exactly a follow-up to what you just said. I'm thinking, does that idea apply to the street improvement, the sidewalk improvement, so it might be able to relieve us of some of our capital expenditures?
Well, HUD probably wouldn't want me to say this, but that is the reality in Fairfield as well as other communities. We do utilize a portion of these federal dollars to meet our road improvement, street improvement, and sidewalk needs that otherwise might be paid for out of the general fund budget or some other source.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Any further questions from the body? Seeing none, any questions from the public? Thank you. Back to the body. We're going to go to a vote. All right. We're voting on item number 5. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Okay, I'll continue reading. Resolved that the program year 40, October 1, 2014 through September 30, 2015 Community Development Block Grant is hereby approved in the amount of $456,698. And further resolved that Michael C. Tetro, First Selectman of the Town of Fairfield, be and hereby is authorized to execute any and all necessary documents that facilitate the town's participation in said CBGB program. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, please raise your hand. Representative Miloragno. Representative DiMartino. Abstention. I'm sorry. Representative Timniak was, what was? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. It was 2. The next item on the agenda is item number 6. To hear, consider, and act upon the following amendment to Chapter 51 of the Fairfield Town Code entitled Blight Prevention, as sponsored by Peter Ambrose, District 2, Edward Bateson, District 3, Sheila Marmion, District 6, and Hal Schwartz, District 7. So it's Section 5(1)(2) definitions. For the purpose of this chapter, the following words, terms, and phrases shall have the following meanings ascribed to them in this chapter. Blight prevention officers. The town official or officials designated by the First Selectman to act as blight prevention officers, the building official, fire marshal, and director of health shall be eligible to be a blight prevention officer. The first selectman shall designate up to 3 blight prevention officers, and one of these to direct the blight prevention officers. A motion to discuss? Representative Lee, seconded by Representative Bateson. Thank you. Any comments or questions from the members of the body? Seeing none. Any comments from the public? Okay, back to the body. Shall I read it again? Thank you. Okay. All in favor of item 6 as read, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. All right. We find ourselves at item number 7, to consider upon and act upon any other matters presented. Yes?
Just point of order. I guess, question from the first selectman to perhaps Mr. Ambrose, as he's in here. If I might ask a question, and I guess in this case I'm going to refer or ask to Peter, if that's Mr. Ambrose, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
Does this go into effect tomorrow morning? Can we start acting on this, or is there some waiting period that we have to? 14 days?
14 days.
Okay.
Assistant town clerk says 14
All right,
days.
thank you.
Thank you. But I would like a moment of personal privilege.
Yes, absolutely.
Peter Ambrose, District 2. I would like this moment of personal privilege to pay respect to Lucy McKinney, who passed this past week. And I'd just like to just comment that she was unselfish in her dedication to the poor and the homeless. She spent a great deal of her time supporting housing for the poor and the homeless. And she's really a very principled member of this community and has been for many, many years. And I just think we should just take a moment and of silence and pay tribute to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ambrose. Are there any other business to come before this body? A motion to dismiss? Sorry, to adjourn. Thank you. I've been in another room all day. Thank you.